Welcome once again to Noir Alley. I'm your gangland guide, Eddie Muller. Now, today's offering is a genuine oddity, a picture served to the American public straight from the guts of the original noir era, from 1947. It's The Gangster. Now, what makes the film unusual is that it's a work of unbridled artistic ambition, with significance and seriousness steeped in practically every frame of its archly theatrical, almost operatic production. Now, that may not be unusual for a film produced at MGM or 20th Century Fox, but for a film made by the King brothers, the monarchs of Poverty Row, it truly is an aberration. Brothers Frank, Maurice, and Herman Kosinski were transplanted New Yorkers who'd made a killing in the West Coast slot machine business during the 1930s, a shady but infinitely more legal business than the rum-running racket their father was involved in during Prohibition. In the early 40s, after renaming themselves the Kings, they broke into the picture-making business, making B-movies and a long-term deal with Monogram. Now, Frank King had the movie-making savvy, and brother Maury was the shrewd money man. And their movies, all made on dirt-cheap budgets, always turned a profit. They enjoyed their biggest score in 1945, producing a cut-and-dried but canny biopic of legendary outlaw John Dillinger. Lawrence Tierney's scary performance struck a chord with ticket buyers and helped camouflage the fact that much of the picture was cobbled together from old stock footage. Now, made at a time when major studios had declared a moratorium on gangster pictures, Dillinger did more business than any B-movie of the day. It even earned an Oscar nomination for writer Philip Yordan, which no doubt convinced the Kings they'd broken into the big leagues. Now, looking for a property to coattail on Dillinger's success, the Kings purchased a highbrow crime novel called Low Company. Published in 1937, it was the last installment of the Williamsburg trilogy, a trio of Depression-era novels by Daniel Fuchs, a young New York schoolteacher and author. Fuchs was an exponent of the proletariat school of literary fiction. His working-class stories had appeared in several important national magazines, which earned him a contract at Warner Brothers, where after a fitful start, he ended up turning out scripts like The Big Shot, The Hard Way, and Between Two Worlds. Eventually, Fuchs wrote screenplays for such noir gems as Hollow Triumph, Crisscross, and Panic in the Streets. His Oscar would come with the 1955 Doris Day drama, Love Me or Leave Me, itself more than a little noir-stained. In most of those cases, Fuchs was adapting the work of others. With The Gangster, the King brothers let him adapt his own book, a rare move in Hollywood. And the results are distinctive. No other noir of the time, with the exception of Abraham Polanski's Force of Evil, features such florid, soul-searching dialogue.
The lists, the papers, you know what I do.
The minute I found out, I wanted to get away from here.
Disgusting. Rotten little rackets. Living off people, the numbers, floating gambling games, one or two other things. Yeah, worse things. Every rotten kind of racket, anything you want to think of, so what? That's me, that's what I do, so what about it?
I never thought there were people like you.
Now, adding to the film's uniqueness are visuals that match the verbal artifice. That's because director Gordon Wiles was primarily a production designer. He won an Oscar for his art direction of the terrific William K. Howard 1931 film Transatlantic, and then went on to do double duty as a designer on A Pictures and a director of B's. When Frank King chose him to direct The Gangster, Wiles hadn't directed a film since 1941's Forced Landing, a Paramount B-unit adventure. Now, Wiles rose to the challenge of recreating an East Coast boardwalk town entirely on sound stages. Frank King believed in saving money by not shooting on location. In fact, he routinely chastised big studios for their profligate spending, telling The Hollywood Reporter, "With The Gangster, we used an art director who was able to reproduce Coney Island and New York's elevated trains in cardboard. By not using proper technicians and with no regard for expense, a different producer might have called in a construction company to build a portion of the L, or even have taken a costly trip to the actual locale. On the screen, the difference cannot be discerned." Well, all due respect to Mr. King, the difference certainly can be discerned. But the more crucial question is, does it matter? No rule says movies need to be naturalistic, only engrossing. And on that score, star Barry Sullivan carries more than his share of the weight. As the title character, a small-time racketeer of indeterminate ethnicity named Shabunka, he mixes seething insecurity with hot-headed temper. Never a good combo in real life, but dynamite on screen.
Tell me, what did you do?
What are you talking about?
Did you sell me out?
Who, me?
Did you go over to them?
I wish I did. I wish I could. The trouble with me is I got a conscience.
All right, then, use your head. Don't panic.
Now, Sullivan had made an earlier picture for the Kings, Monogram's first $1 million movie, a quirky 1946 noir called simply Suspense. It was intended as the breakthrough role for Sullivan's ice skating co-star, Belita, who plays his squeeze in today's movie. Now, Sullivan would candidly remark about his co-star, "I always had a fondness for Belita because she didn't know what the fudge was happening. She was a great skater, but acting and filmmaking were totally foreign to her." Well, I too have a fondness for Belita, which I'll reveal in earnest when we screen her best noir, The Hunted, in a few weeks. But today there's no ice skating on Coney Island. Instead, we're taking a deep dive into the moral muck of a seaside sleaze pit. The low company featured is portrayed by an astounding array of noir regulars: Harry Morgan, John Ireland, Akim Tamarov, Sheldon Leonard, Elijah Cook Jr., and Charles McGraw. There are also terrific turns by actresses Joan Loring, Fifi D'Orsay, and Virginia Christine, known to us old-timers as the Folgers Coffee Lady. And in bit parts, keep your eyes peeled for Jeff Corey, Billy Gray, and Shelley Winters. Now, even with all that, I'm still leaving out a bunch of familiar faces. Seriously, this movie is a bonanza of bit parts. So settle in as the curtain rises on this most stagey of noirs, The Gangster.